So this is part 2 of centering up an isometric drawing. So what we've got to do, we've got our box drawn here. What we're going to do is number 21 now. So let's take down a sheet of drafting paper and draw the drafting template. So that's been done. I didn't do the lettering. Students, you can do that on your own, okay? So we've got the drafting template. It's the same every time. So we've got that done, all right? And 22 says use the length and height of the box. So they're talking about this box here, okay? And follow directions on process sheets centering up a one-view orthographic drawing to draw the box that the isometric drawing will fit in on the drafting paper. So remember too that the centering box is going to stay construction lines on your green paper. The only reason that I drew it as object lines on the white paper was to help me with the measurements. And remember that isometric drawing is going to fit inside of this box, okay? So that's what we've got to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure the box. So the length of this box is 4.5 inches. So we've got 4.5 inches, okay? From here to here. And then we're gonna measure the height of it. So the height of this box is 5 3/8 inches. So we've got 5 3/8 inches from here to here. All right, so now we know that. So you need to remember how we centered up at one view orthographic. So what we did is to center it up vertically first. We'll put vertical right there. We got to remember how much drawing distance there was between the top border line and the title block line, and that was 7 inches. So if you double check that, it should be 7 inches, and it is. So we're going to write that down. So I've got 7 inches of drawing space. And we got to see how much drawing space that the drawing is going to take up vertically. It's going to take up 5 3/8 inches. So we've got to subtract 5 3/8 inches from 7. So to do that, what we've got to do, an easy way to do this is we can change 7 to 6 8/8. Subtract 5 3/8 from that, and then we'll get our leftover space. So 6 minus 5 is 1. 8/8 minus 3/8 is 5/8. Okay? So now what we have to do is we have to take half of that. So we got to divide this by 2, all right, to get it centered up. Because 1 5/8 is how much leftover space we have to center it. We got to get this divided by 2. So to do that, we'll take half of 1, which is a half, and we're going to add half of 5/8 to it. So half of 5/8, if you remember, we keep the numerator, double the denominator. So it's a half plus 5/16. So what we're gonna have to do is convert a half to 16ths to add these together. So it's 8/16 plus 5/16, which equals 13/16. All right, so that's how far we're gonna come down here and up here. So we're gonna do that with our 9H pencil. So we're gonna come down 13/16 on that left border line from the top border line. Then we're going to come up from the title block line 13/16. And in between there, we should have 5 3/8 because that's how tall our box is, and we do. So what we're going to do is draw 2 light horizontal construction lines at those points. So from borderline to borderline, and come down and get the bottom one. Just like that. All right, now we've got to do the same thing horizontally. So we're going to center it up horizontally. So if we think about that, we got to figure out how much horizontal drawing space we have between the 2 border lines, left and right. We have 11 inches. So if you double check it, you should have 11 inches. So we're going to write that down, and we're going to subtract how much space the drawing is going to take up horizontally. So it's going to take up 4.5 inches. So we'll subtract 4.5 inches, okay? So an easy way to think about this is you take 11 minus 4, you end up with 7. Take another half away, you end up with 6.5. All right, that's how much extra space we have left over. To center it, we divide that by 2. So half of 6 is 3. Half of a half, all you've got to do is keep the numerator, double the denominator, 3 1/4. There's our answer right there, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our 9H pencil and we're gonna use this bottom construction line that we drew. And we're gonna come over from the left border line 3 1/4 inches. Make a mark there, and then come back from the right border line, 3 1/4 inches. Then what we should have in between there is 4 1/2. And there we go, we have 4 1/2 inches in between there. Now we're gonna use our 30-60 triangle, and I'm gonna draw vertical construction lines from that point up to the top construction line that we just drew. And now we've got our centering box, okay? So we've drawn this box on here to center it up. The next thing that we have to do is we have to figure out where that isometric axis is. So we've got number 22 done. So number 23 says, once you've drawn the box to center up the drawing, look back at the computer paper that you drew the centering box on. So we're gonna look back at this paper here, all right? In 24, we're gonna measure the distance from the bottom left corner of the centering box to the point where the isometric axis starts, okay? We gotta figure out where that isometric axis starts within our box, okay? So we're gonna measure that. So if we measure that, it's 3 1/8 inches. So remember that, we'll write that down. Isometric axis is over 3 1/8 inches, okay? So we're gonna lay that out with our 9H pencil. And that starts from this corner right here, because everything is drawn now inside of this box. So this isn't used, none of that's used, none of this is used, and none of this is used. Everything is measured and drawn inside of this box now. So we're gonna measure over 3 1/8 inches from that corner, the lower left corner of our centering box. And right there's where our isometric axis starts. So once we get that in 26, we're gonna draw the isometric axis from that point in construction lines. So we're gonna draw a vertical line from that point up. You don't have to draw it all the way to the top. We're gonna flip the triangle down so we draw 30 degrees. Don't do that, that's 60 degrees. We want the triangle down at 30 degrees. We're gonna slide the triangle over from that bottom point, draw a 30-degree line up and to the right till it hits our construction line, vertical construction line from the center box on the right. Then we'll flip it over. We'll go from the left vertical construction line of the center box down to our point where the isometric axis starts. And there's our isometric axis. So now you've centered it up and you've drawn your isometric axis, and you're ready to start the next step, which is laying out and drawing the front view of the actual object. So to do that, if you look, there's no measurements on this object. So we've got to actually take the measurements off of the object. So if you look, that point right there is this, okay? So we've already got this line right here, okay? So we don't have to measure that line. So that point right here is this point, okay? So where we're at now, if you remember, you need to draw the perimeter of the front first. So all we've got to do now is figure out how long this vertical line is here. We've got a vertical line there. We drew that when we centered it up. We just got to measure how long it is and lay it out on that line. So if we do that, you'll see that that line is 2 3/4 inches. So we got to come up from here. Don't make the mistake of coming up from here. We need to start here. So we're going to come up 2 3/4 inches from that point and lay it out. All right. So that gives us where we'll have this point, okay? So that's that point. The next thing we need to do for the front, because this is the front right here, okay? That L shape. We need this line coming down to draw that perimeter. Well, we don't have a line there. So what we've got to do is draw a construction line down that we think is longer than what this line is going to be so we can actually add our measurement on it. And remember, it's 30 degrees down to the right. So we're going to go from there. I'm going to go a little bit more than halfway. And now we've got a line that we can actually measure on. So if we measure this, and remember, this distance was 2 3/4 inches. So we'll measure this distance now on that line. That line is 1 13/16 of an inch long. So this line is 1 13/16 inches long. That's how far I need to come down and measure on that line. So I'm gonna come down 1 13/16 and lay it out. So I've got my layout marked there now. Now that gets us to this point. So that is this. Now the next line we need in the perimeter of the front is this vertical line coming down from that point. We don't have one, so we've got to draw one. So we're going to line our 30-60 triangle up so we can draw a vertical line down from that point. So I'm going to go a little bit more than halfway, because if you look, this line looks like it's about half of the distance of the entire object. So it's got to have enough line to measure on. So I'm going to start down a little bit below halfway, draw up to that point, then I'm going to measure that line. So that line is 1 3/8 of an inch long. So we're going to write that down. So this line is 1 3/8 of an inch long. And we'll measure down that far. So I'm going to go from that point and measure down 1 3/8, which is right here. Okay? Now, that gives us this point. So we've got that line now right there. The only other line we need is from here to here. Well, if you look, there's our isometric axis line there. All we've got to do is connect at a 30-degree angle the line from that point to the isometric axis vertical line. So I'm going to take my triangle, lay it down at 30 degrees, and draw a construction line that touches that isometric axis. Now we've laid out our front. The next easiest thing to do, so you don't get confused, is if you look, we don't really need any more of this vertical line of the isometric axis past that point. So I'm going to erase this. And this will help you when you first start out. All right, so now we've got our front. The next thing that you want to do is you're going to do number 4, which is lay out and draw the top and right side views with construction lines. So we're using our 9/8 pencil, and we're going to look. The easiest thing to do with this is start at the bottom with what you already have. I'm going to start down here at the bottom and work my way up. So if I look at what I have, right here is that point. So I've already got this line at the bottom right here for the right side view. So this is part of the right side view. So I've got that line and I've got this line. The easiest thing for me to do is come off of this point with a 30-degree line that touches this line, and then I'll have that whole surface. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to line my triangle up right with this point, go up and to the right until I touch this line. Now, that gives me that surface, okay? And if it helps, you can erase any of these other little, what we call tails in here too, if that helps you. All right, so if I look from there, the next surface I need is this one. That's part of the top view if I'm looking down from the top. But I have all the points I need. So if you look, if I take a line from that point, which is right there, go up at 30 degrees, and then come from this point and go up at 30 degrees the opposite way, where they cross is going to give me that point right there. So I don't have to do any measuring. All I've got to do is lay my triangle down. From that point, draw a line up 30 degrees to the right. Then I'm going to flip the triangle over and come from this point. And then I have that surface. So I drew the opposite angle of 30 degrees. So now I have this surface, which is this, okay? And again, if it helps, you can erase these little tails right here so you can see better. All right, so now I've got this surface. Working my way up, I need this surface, which is part of the right side view, okay? So if I look, I've got that point, which is there. I've got this point, which is here. And then I've got this point. So the only other thing I need is this vertical line and a 30-degree line to connect that, okay? And I've got what I need. I've got a point there to come off up to the right 30 degrees, and then a vertical line from that point right there, and where they connect will give me that surface. So I'm gonna use my 9/8 pencil. I'm gonna go up and to the right at 30 degrees from this point, and make sure you just draw your lines longer than what you need them, and you can erase them later. Then I'll come down with this vertical line from that point right there, and then where it touches, gives me this surface, okay? So now I've got this surface right here. The only other surface we need is this part of the top view. So that's also part of the top. And the same thing, if I look, I've got this corner right here, which is that point, okay? So if I go up and to the right, it'll give me that line. And then I've got this point right here, which is this point. And if I go up and to the left, where they cross will give me this surface. So that's what I'm gonna do now. And it may be a little bit above or below our centering line, depending on how good we lay this out. So let's see. Draw that a little bit longer than what I need. Flip my triangle over. And I'm maybe a 1/16 of an inch off right there at the most. That's okay, all right? Now we've got this surface. So now you've drawn the entire object. So now is the point where you look and see if you need to make any corrections. So if there's any corrections that need to be made, anything that needs to be redrawn, do it now so you can erase it while it's construction lines. Ours looks pretty good, so now we're gonna darken in the entire object as object lines. So the method for that is if you're right-handed, you need to start at the left and move towards the right so you're not going over top of your lines and smudge them as much. If you're left-handed, start on the right and move towards the left, okay? So that's what we're gonna do now. So I'm gonna start right here with this vertical line. We'll go right back over top of it. Do not ever freehand these lines. Notice I'm using my triangle so they're nice and straight. So we're gonna draw this line. Then I'm just gonna keep going, moving kind of towards the right. And notice I picked my triangle up. And we'll darken all these in, and then we'll be done. So if you go past the center box, it's more important to show the natural shape of the object than it is to stop at that box. Some people want to stop there and draw a little flap. That doesn't show the natural true shape of the object, so you don't want to do that. And then you're done. So before you turn this in, what you want to do is sprinkle a little bit of eraser chromes on it so it doesn't smudge. Brush it off, and then you're completely finished.